A League of Their Own is a film about women who stepped into a field never built for them, played by rules designed to shrink them, and refused to go quietly once they were finally allowed in the game. Behind the easy confidence seen on screen, the real story was being rebuilt under pressure. A star forced to train like a pro athlete, uniforms that punished the women inside them, and real Rockford Peaches far tougher than the movie ever showed. These are 15 fascinating facts about A League of Their Own, a classic shaped by restraint, rewritten by reality, and remembered because it listened when it mattered. Number 15. Hollywood didn't let A League of Their Own fade quietly. It tried twice to expand the story, and the results couldn't have been more different. The first attempt came in 1993 when CBS launched a half-hour sitcom continuing the adventures of the Rockford Peaches. Some familiar faces returned, like Marla Hooch and Betty Spaghetti, but main characters such as Dottie and Kit were recast. The series leaned into comedy instead of the emotional tone that defined the film. It never quite found its footing. Ratings dropped, and CBS canceled it after only 3 episodes, leaving 3 more unaired until later distribution. The heart of Penny Marshall's film didn't translate into canned laughter. Nearly 30 years later, Amazon tried again, this time with a prestige drama reboot. The new series widened its scope, exploring real stories the original movie couldn't cover. Queer players forced to hide their identities, black women excluded from the league, and the quiet resilience of athletes erased from history. Critics praised the show, calling it a richer and more authentic portrait of what the AAGPBL truly represented. But after internal restructuring, Amazon ended the series after just 1 season and a closing special. 2 spin-offs, 2 completely different tones, both proof of how deeply the original film has rooted itself in American culture. Fun fact, while the actresses were training, sliding into bases, and working with professional coaches, Tom Hanks had a very different assignment: losing shape. To play Jimmy Dugan, a fallen legend who traded fastballs for bar stools, he joked that his preparation was the easiest of his career. He ate ribs, desserts, anything that slowed him down and softened his edges. The results were perfect. His walk changed, his posture sagged, and his voice took on the weary tone of a man who once lived for baseball and now lived for whatever was on the menu. The cast trained to look like athletes. Hanks trained to look like someone who used to be one. A League of Their Own was never just a baseball movie. It was a bold and timely reminder that history only moves forward when someone refuses to stay silent. These women played through bruises, beauty standards, charm school lessons, and a country that didn't believe they belonged on the field. And still, they built something real, a league that survived a war, and a legacy that waited decades to be seen in full. Number 14. In the film, the founder of the AAGPBL is Walter Harvey, the candy tycoon played by Gary Marshall, a fictional chocolate bar magnate who funds women's baseball simply because he loves the sport. But history tells a different story. The real founder was Philip K. Wrigley, heir to the Wrigley chewing gum empire and owner of the Chicago Cubs. Wrigley invested heavily in uniforms, travel, scouting, and publicity, all in an effort to keep baseball alive while the men were away at war. So why change it? The filmmakers never gave an official reason, but the choice makes sense. Wrigley carried decades of real-world baggage and a complicated legacy. By replacing him with a fictional candy mogul, the story could focus on the women themselves rather than the corporate machinery behind them. Walter Harvey became a symbolic stand-in, a recognizable businessman who keeps the sport afloat without tethering the movie to historical biography. The change streamlined the narrative and allowed the spotlight to stay exactly where Penny Marshall wanted it. Number 13. When World War II forced thousands of male players into military service, the infrastructure of American baseball collapsed almost overnight. Minor league teams shut down, stadiums sat empty, and owners feared the national pastime might disappear before the war even ended. Chicago Cubs owner Philip K. Wrigley decided he couldn't let the sport die on his watch. In 1942, he assembled a special committee to find a solution, and they came up with an idea that seemed impossible at the time. Women could keep professional baseball alive. Scouts spread across the Midwest, visiting factory leagues, state tournaments, and rural diamonds, where women were already playing fiercely competitive baseball far from the spotlight. They weren't novelty acts. They were athletes, fast, disciplined, and hungry for a real league of their own. The challenge wasn't their ability, it was the infrastructure. Wrigley had to build an entirely new system from the ground up: coaches, uniforms, travel schedules, training camps, and a marketing strategy to convince wartime America to fill the stands. In 1943, the Poor All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, NAPWE, officially launched, not as a temporary gimmick, but as a lifeline for a sport in danger of vanishing. And it worked. The league survived the war, thrived for over a decade, and proved that women's professional baseball wasn't a stopgap solution. It was a revelation. Number 12. The Rockford Peaches weren't a Hollywood invention. They were one of 15 real teams in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, and they played with fierce intensity. Cities like Peoria, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, and Chicago had their own clubs, but Rockford became a powerhouse, earning a reputation for precision, grit, and some of the finest baseball the Midwest had ever seen. The character of Dottie Hinson was largely inspired by real-life first baseman Dorothy Dottie Kamenchek, a player so talented that scouts later claimed she could have competed in the men's minor leagues. She vividly remembered those early crowds. At first, they came to see the skirts, she said, but then we showed them we could play. Still, the league demanded much more than athletic excellence. Players had to maintain a strict sense of femininity: short haircuts, daily charm school lessons, a polished appearance, good manners, and flawless makeup. The rules were unforgiving. Smoking, drinking, wearing pants in public, or being seen without lipstick could get a player dismissed. The league sold glamour. The Peaches earned respect, and they did it through bruises, broken fingers, and grueling doubleheaders, all while smiling for the camera. Number 11. Batman Returns. Wasn't just any competition. It was a cultural earthquake. Dark, stylish, backed by massive marketing, and directed by Tim Burton at the height of his power. Releasing a film against it in July of 1992 seemed like box office suicide. But A League of Their Own rose to the challenge. In its opening weekend, it earned an impressive $13.2 million. Not enough to beat The Caped Crusader, but enough to shock analysts who thought a women's baseball movie would flop instantly. Then something remarkable happened. Instead of dropping 40% or more in its second week, as most films did, it only fell 13%. That meant one thing: word of mouth was spreading fast. By its third week, Penny Marshall's film did the unthinkable. It surpassed Batman and claimed the #1 spot at the box office. Families kept going, couples kept returning, and many viewers went to see it a second and third time. By the end of its run, it had grossed over $7 million in the US, becoming the highest-grossing baseball movie in history at the time. Against a superhero giant, a team of women simply outplayed the competition. Not bad for a film everyone thought would fail, right? Number 10. Before A League of Their Own became a cultural milestone, Penny Marshall walked straight into 20th Century Fox. She came in confident, hopeful, and carrying a script that blended comedy, history, and sports in a way no one had tried before. And Fox didn't hesitate. They said no. Not maybe, not almost. A flat-out rejection. The executives were convinced no audience would show up for a movie about women playing baseball. They thought it was too niche, too risky, too feminine. Marshall left the meeting stunned, especially after proving herself with multiple box office hits. Refusing to give up, she took the exact same script to Sony, and their reaction couldn't have been more different. They greenlit it enthusiastically, betting big on Marshall's vision. When the film became a classic, the Fox executives quietly admitted what everyone already knew. No one forgets the studio that once said women's baseball wouldn't sell. Number 9. The uniforms of the Women's Professional Baseball League weren't fashion. They were restrictions disguised as elegance. Costume designer Cynthia Flint Beekster recreated them with brutal precision. Short skirts, cinched waists, stockings. The same outfits real players had been forced to wear while proving they could truly play. They looked great on camera but were a nightmare on the field. Sliding meant bruises on top of bruises. Madonna tore up her legs within days, and Rosie O'Donnell joked that the uniforms must have been designed by someone who'd never run for a bus, let alone a base. But that discomfort wasn't a mistake. It was the same contradiction the real players faced. Play like men, look like models. When the cast complained, several former players visited the set. They didn't comfort them. They just smiled and said, "Now you know those skirts weren't costumes. They were reminders of what every woman carried while breaking the rules of her time and winning her place on the field." Number 8. The line that became the soul of the movie wasn't written, rehearsed, or planned. Tom Hanks was only supposed to scold Evelyn, nothing more. But when Bitty Schramm's voice cracked and tears began to fall, Hanks let his character, Jimmy Dugan, a washed-up legend barely holding himself together, explode naturally. "Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying in baseball." The exchange kept escalating, each line sharper than the last. The actress's stunned reactions were completely real. When the scene ended, Penny Marshall stopped the camera and said, "That's it. That's the shot." A spontaneous outburst became one of cinema's most unforgettable moments. The perfect snapshot of a man broken, furious, brilliant, and still, somehow, deeply in love with the game that defined him. Number 7. Lori Petty wasn't the obvious choice to play Kit Keller. The casting directors wanted someone who looked more sisterly next to Geena Davis. But Penny Marshall saw something different. A wild energy, that restless little sister fire you simply can't fake. Petty brought a raw intensity to every scene, turning Kit from a supporting role into a force of ambition and jealousy that drove much of the story. On set, Petty and Davis built their sisterly bond through small, improvised moments. The way Kit flinches when Dottie gets praised, the smile that hides envy, the tension that finally bursts just before the championship game. That real emotional connection shaped their rivalry and gave the film its beating heart. Then came the final play, the moment that still sparks debate today. Kit charges home, Dottie blocks the plate, there's a brutal collision, the ball flies free, and Kit scores. The Rockford Peaches lose. Did Dottie drop it on purpose? Marshall shot the scene so no one could ever be sure. Davis played it as a choice. Petty played it as a clean, hard-earned win. Marshall refused to settle the question. 30 years later, the argument is still alive. The ending works both ways, and the real question isn't whether Dottie made a mistake. It's whether you believe she would have. That's Lori Petty's legacy. She didn't just play Kit, she made you care who won. Number 6. Fresh off filming. My Cousin Vinny, Marissa Tomei was so determined to join A League of Their Own that she taped her audition right on that same set, with Joe Pesci himself coaching her baseball moves between takes. Picture it, Pesci still dressed as Vinny Gambini, shouting batting tips and yelling, "No, no, keep your elbow up." Tomei gave it everything she had. She pitched, slid, ran, hoping Penny Marshall would see her passion beyond her technique. But Marshall stood firm. This film required actresses who could genuinely perform as athletes on camera, even in wide shots. Solid acting wasn't enough. She needed women who could field grounders and throw out runners at second. No edits needed. Tomei's audition was charming and full of energy, but she ultimately didn't get the part. Still, it became one of the sweetest near misses in the film's casting history. A future Oscar winner, coached by Joe Pesci's loud sports commentary, who lost the role not because of her talent, but because of her fundamentals on the field. Number 5. Rosie O'Donnell didn't need baseball lessons. She grew up playing Little League with her brothers, throwing pitches across the yard and taking hits that toughened her up long before she ever set foot on a soundstage. So, when she showed up as Doris Murphy, with her glove ready, perfect stance, and fierce attitude, the coaches immediately relaxed. Rosie didn't have to learn baseball for the movie. She simply picked up where her childhood had left off. But what no one expected happened off the field. Long days of filming meant hundreds of background extras sitting in the stands for hours, drained and bored, until Rosie showed up. She recruited a comedian friend to entertain the crowd between takes, and when that wasn't enough, she did it herself, singing Madonna songs, cracking jokes with the cast, and turning downtime into a mini late-night show that kept everyone laughing. Her playful rivalry with Madonna became a running gag. Rosie would start singing Vogue. Madonna would glare and tell her never to sing her songs again. The next day, Rosie would show up and belt out Like a Prayer. By the end of filming, the two had built one of the warmest off-screen friendships on set, a perfect contrast to the grit and toughness of the baseball scenes they brought to life on screen. Number 4. Penny Marshall didn't need a star. She needed a ball player, someone who could throw long passes and swing like a real catcher in wide shots. Most auditions failed instantly. The actresses couldn't catch basic pitches, their mechanics were off, or they swung like they were holding a broom instead of a bat. The athletic gap was so large that Marshall began to fear she'd need body doubles for half the film. Then Gina Davis stepped into her backyard. As a warm-up, Marshall tossed her a baseball. Davis took the perfect stance, caught it cleanly, and threw it back with a crisp spin, the kind you only see from someone who instinctively understands the motion. It's said that Marshall uttered just one line, "That's it." And the casting coaches were stunned. Davis, who had avoided sports her entire life, showed a natural athleticism stronger than many actresses who had trained for weeks. Her footwork was clean, her shoulders controlled, her hand-eye coordination sharp. She picked up the game as if she'd been waiting her whole life to discover it. The experience changed her forever. Years later, Davis competed in the U.S. Olympic archery trials and credited A League of Their Own for awakening a confidence she never knew she had. Her casting didn't just solve a continuity problem, it gave the film a lead actress who could anchor every baseball scene with real athleticism and authenticity. Number 3. When Madonna heard that Penny Marshall was casting a film about women's baseball, she didn't wait for an offer. She went after it with determination. Even after producer Robert Greenhut warned her the paycheck would be tiny, she insisted she wanted to play Mae Mortabito. She wanted the acting challenge, the athletic challenge, and the chance to prove she was more than just a pop star. Once on set, she trained with a seriousness that surprised everyone. She threw herself into base running drills, fielding practice, and especially Mae's brutal slide into third base, a stunt that took multiple takes and left her covered in bruises. But Madonna also arrived with all the contradictions of a global superstar. Some days she was sweet, focused, and generous with the cast. Other days, she grew frustrated when Marshall's attention drifted elsewhere, slipping into full diva mode and demanding the spotlight she was used to on stage. Still, when the cameras rolled, the work spoke for itself. That mix of attitude, grit, and precision created a Mae Mortabito who still steals every scene she's in. Bold, stylish, and irresistibly charismatic. A character only Madonna could have brought to life. Number 2. That incredible split behind home plate. The shot used in every trailer, every highlight reel, every anniversary montage, wasn't done by a double. It was Gina Davis, fully committed, completely focused, and acutely aware that she had never done anything like it in her life. She asked Penny Marshall to schedule the move toward the end of production, giving herself a few extra weeks to quietly train her flexibility and mechanics. When the day came, Davis nailed the split perfectly, only to realize immediately that the hardest part wasn't getting into it, but getting out. She later admitted she was stuck there, legs locked, muscles screaming, completely unable to stand up. Crew members had to lift her while she tried not to laugh or cry. But in that moment, precision, control, and athletic grace all came together to define Dottie Hinson visually. One shot told the entire story, calm, confident, and better than almost anyone else on the field. And it all came from an actress willing to push her body as far as the character demanded. Number 1. The original cut of A League of Their Own ran over 4 hours long, and inside it was a storyline that would have completely changed the heart of the film. In that version, Dottie and Jimmy aren't just catcher and coach. They share a charged moment. After a grueling batting practice, Jimmy leans in and kisses her. It's that spark that pushes Dottie to leave the league early. Not the exhaustion, not the pressure, but something forbidden, almost romantic. Then Penny Marshall screened the rough cut for real players from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, and their reaction was immediate, emotional, and angry. These were women whose husbands were overseas, women who played baseball while writing letters to men who might never come home. The idea of Dottie kissing another man didn't just feel wrong, it felt like a betrayal of the lives they had actually lived. Marshall cut the entire subplot. Other scenes fell with it. A quiet confession where Dottie reveals she and Bob got married the night he was drafted. He was scared. I'm scared. So we wanted to be sure. And a longer sequence with a drunken stranger betting kid in a bar, where Jimmy shows up late to pull her out of trouble, all trimmed down until only fragments remained. Those edits didn't just shorten the film, they transformed it. Jimmy became a mentor instead of a temptation. Dottie stayed faithful instead of conflicted. And the story remained grounded in the emotional truth those real players fought to protect. Sometimes what you cut ends up saving the film. If this story left you wanting more, don't stay on the sidelines. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next film, the next hidden fact, and the next story Hollywood almost left out of the script.